Good morning, you're watching the Channel 9 Breakfast Show on Monday, the 11th of May, and this little rascal is Byron Evans.
And this little rascal isn't. It's Nicky Dino Dean.
Yeah, it certainly is. Sound like a boxer there, don't I? Now, the sun might be out now. We're all getting very excited. The summer seems like it's on its way. Byron's got some great news for us.
Well, I think so. My dad told me this old proverb. You know, we hear lots of these old wives' tales and urban legends over the years, but this one's a bit of a cracker regarding our summer, right? Now, have you ever heard of this? Oak before the ash will get a splash. Ash before the oak will get a soak. This all to do with how much rainfall we'll get over the summer months. Now, over the last few years, the ash has always come into green. Basically, the leaves have come out earlier than the oak for the past 4 or 5 years. But as my dad pointed out the other weekend, the oak is greener than the ash already. Now, the ash has always traditionally been, I think, the last tree to actually go into green. And there's a few people yawning around the studio floor, but it's important.
Mike Bradley's like this.
Yeah, look at him, not sport, I'm not bothered. But we could be having a fantastic summer over the next few months. And you know what? I'm willing to place a bet after that. I reckon
really?
a quid. Yeah. Otherwise, in a couple of weeks, come and tell me I'm wrong, right here on the show.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Bikinis at the ready then,
yes,
by all accounts. Got
mine under my whistle. In a few minutes, we've got all the latest sports headlines with Mike. Plus, the Minister for Children, Beverley Hughes, will be here. But first, let's get the latest news headlines with James.
Good morning. These are your top stories so far this Monday. A 16-year-old boy has been shot dead in Stretford. Police were called to the Robin Hood pub on Barton Road following reports of gunfire shortly before midnight. The 16-year-old was driven to Trafford General Hospital with gunshot wounds to the head. He died a short time later. 3 men aged between 18 and 22 have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Every frontline police officer in Greater Manchester is to be given a handheld computer. £10 million will be spent on the new touchscreen technology. They'll be linked to cameras which can check vehicle licence plates within seconds and allow access to information and pictures of suspects. Satellite links will also allow the officers themselves to be tracked by their colleagues back at base. It's the Conservatives who've now been dragged into the row over MPs' expenses. Several senior Tories have now had their claims printed in the morning papers, among them Shadow School Secretary Michael Gove, who spent £7,000 on one property in London before buying a house in Surrey and claiming thousands more on that. Andrew Lansley, who speaks for the party on health issues, is also criticised for renovating a Tudor cottage at the taxpayers' expense. Leader David Cameron's said sorry and says the system needs to change. The fiancé of a female police officer who was found with fatal injuries after a car crash is due in court accused of her murder. Claire Howard from Rochdale was found badly hurt in her vehicle near Harwood in Bury last Thursday morning. Martin Forshaw, who's 26 and from Tottington, is due before magistrates in Bolton. Veterans from World War II, along with their families, have staged a moving ceremony to remember those who lost their lives during the conflict. It was held in St Peter's Square to mark the anniversary of VE Day, when fighting in Europe ended.
The Russians celebrate the end of the war not on the 8th of May, which used to be the VE Day here, but on the 9th of May. And in Soviet times, there were huge parades in Red Square and so on to celebrate it. Now it has become a more thoughtful ceremony in a way, because the Russians suffered terrible losses in that war. So the ceremony is partly rejoicing at victory, but it's mainly now a remembrance of the sacrifices which that victory required.
A school for children with special needs, which is facing closure, has been recognised nationally for its high standards. The Lancasterian School has been congratulated for helping youngsters develop their communication skills. Education bosses plan to take pupils out of there and put them into mainstream schools instead. Around 3,000 people turned out over the weekend to watch Manchester's answer to the Oxford and Cambridge boat race. Teams from Manchester and Salford battled it out, with the men's Senior 8 being the most hotly contested competition. We were there for all the action as Manchester came out on top.
Manchester in front at the moment.
It's the Two Cities boat race at the moment between Salford and Manchester University. It's been on the quays, now for about the last 10 years, and it's been competed since the 1970s. Generally, the pattern of the last couple of years has been that Manchester have dominated, although every now and then Salford do come along and spring a surprise, and so you can never be too complacent that you're going to win as a Manchester athlete. The training is extremely intense, and these guys at Manchester and Salford will both be training probably about 7 times a week. I mean, I know that you say that students get an easy life, but these guys are, going to the water, down to the clubhouse at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then they're doing lectures all day, and then they're probably back in the gym in the evening as well. But they are achieving national success, especially Manchester at the moment.
Finally for now, a schoolgirl from Poynton's come forward to claim ownership of a balloon which travelled thousands of miles from Stockport to Istanbul. It was released to mark World Book Day from a shop in Bramall and ended up on a Turkish farm. 8-year-old Victoria Ambrosino will now get a goodie bag and the chance to meet her favourite author after coming forward to say it was hers. That's all from me for this morning. I'll be back with the Channel M lunchtime news at 12 noon, and don't forget Andy Crane's here from 5 tonight with all the day's main headlines. Now though, the sport with Byron and Mike.
Well, Manchester United maybe that one step closer to the Premiership title. But what of our lower leagues across the region for their playoff hopes? And Rochdale and Bury are both in action.
They were both in action all season. We've been saying at least one of them will make it to the playoffs, if not by automatic promotion. Unfortunately, neither of them will be doing it. Bury lost 4-3 on penalties at Gig Lane yesterday against Shrewsbury, while Rochdale went down 2-1 at Gillingham. 2-1 the aggregate score as well, so close yet so far. And I think both managers can hold their heads up high, but a great period of rebuilding during the summer as both those teams hopefully go one step better next season. But a great result. I mean, for so long they've propped up the wrong end of the division, and for the past 4 or 5 years they've been embroiled in the relegation battle. So they've had their time in the sun. Let's hope they get used to it. Let's hope they can build on it.
Well, Tevez looks like he's on his way out of Old Trafford at the end of the season, and he did his prize figure no end of good by scoring as well. Do you think we got any idea where he'll go?
Well, we've alluded to the fact he could be heading to Manchester City all morning. The stories this morning say Tottenham have joined Chelsea and Real Madrid as the front runners to sign the wizard, really. He really is a wizard. I think he'll still stay in the Premier Division. Will he want to go down to London or will he want to stay up here? I think he's quite happy up here, and he would love to move to Manchester City just to give Sir Alex Ferguson something to think about. So that's where my money is this morning.
Not far for his little legs to carry him.
Absolutely.
Scurry over to Easton.
Absolutely. Any more cliches?
Loads, but I haven't got time at the moment.
Can't wait. Good.
I'm always a little bit worried when we see that Stockport, and we've got news coming from down at Edgeley Park.
Yeah, normally the beginning of that sentence says cash strapped, doesn't it? Yeah. Stockport. Well, they are. I know Jim Ganner's left. The back room have gone completely. The club shop's been closed down. Ollie Johnson, the striker who did so well in League One this season, he scored upwards of 15 goals. He's attracted the interest of Roy Hodgson, who tried to sign him during the season, and now obviously with Stockport cash strapped, he will go for a lot less. So a good bit of business for Roy Hodgson. He's turned Fulham around as well, and Ollie Johnson will do great in the Premiership next season, should he agree to leave Stockport for the dizzy heights of the Premiership, which I think he will.
Yeah, OK. You mentioned earlier how Drogba and Ballack may receive their penalties rather soon as for their actions in the Champions League after the match. But the Chelsea fans have taken matters into their own hands.
They have. They're very, very angry with Tom Henning of Rabo, the Norwegian referee who denied them. They think 4 clear-cut penalties. I don't think any of them were clear-cut penalties. Chelsea got their just rewards. They've launched an internet campaign to make sure Norway don't win the Eurovision Song Contest. How the football fan has plummeted in my estimation over the past 3 or 4 years. A few years ago they would have come up with something a little bit better than that, but now they don't want Norway to win the Eurovision Song Contest. I think they're holding their hands up there, to be quite honest, and saying Drogba was in the wrong, so was Ballack. At least one of them will be leaving before the end of the month, we imagine.
I bet all those Norwegian crooners are terrified, aren't they?
I bet they are.
Yep. OK, and onto the FA Vase final, which took place at the weekend, and well, all our hopes were pinned on Glossop.
Yeah, we'll say that for a little bit longer. We're going to take a look at the Lancashire result first of all in the Friends Provident Trophy yesterday down at Essex. It was a one-day result. Essex made it 1-5-7. Ashwell Prince scored 44 of those. In reply, Essex, well, they wrapped up the victory with quite a few overs to spare. 160 for 4. Glenn Chappell, the only highlight, taking 2 for 33. Lancs decided to bat. They were 88 for 4 at one stage, but you win some, you lose some. Played 5-1-4. They're still joint top in the Friends Providence, so
Pretty good run of form of late for Lancs.
Absolutely, yeah. Only their second defeat of the season, so pretty good for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a look at the Carnegie Challenge Cup now. I know you're interested in that. The draw was made overnight. Good time for Salford away at Wigan. Hull KR entertain Warrington. The Battle of the Also-Rans, Huddersfield play Castleford. St Helens travel to Gateshead, but as we've said all morning, what a time for Salford. 2 games away from a visit to the new Wembley. Just rewards for all the hard work John Wilkinson's down there. Ties to be played the weekend of the 29th to the 31st of May. It's not quite the challenging tie we once would have thought. Salford travelling to Wigan. Brian Noble is under a tremendous deal of pressure there. They haven't performed well this season, and if you have got to tick an outside team to reach that final, my money would be on Salford.
Yeah, come on, Salford. They've really picked up momentum after a stumbling box at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but now they turn the corner, and my money's on them.
OK, talking of momentum, it seems to fall apart for Glossop. FA Vars taking place at Wembley at the weekend.
Yeah, they had a tremendous run to get there. I mean, they've enjoyed their moment in the limelight. The newspapers have followed them. It was a carnival atmosphere at Wembley. They played Whitley Bay. That's as good as it got, I'm afraid.
Rick Bailey. Not quite. And Picton can just pick it up and find his man. It's an attempt to try and lob it over the goalkeeper. It's a save and it's onto the crossbar. Well, how about that? What a goal that would have been. Over the top from Moore to find Paul Chow up against Danny Yates. Still got it, Chow. Kurt. Leaker's done really well here to find the space to score for Whitley Bay. The opening goal in this 2009 FA Vars final. And Leaker all on his own. In towards Hamilton. Real chance. Brilliant block by Picton. Don't know how much he knew of it. And look at this, Johnston. Here's Paul Chow. It's 2-0. From one end to the other. And Whitley Bay's afternoon is just getting better and better.
Thanks to Byron and Mike. Well, I'm joined now by the Children's Minister, Beverley Hughes, who's here to give us an update on the Greater Manchester Challenge. This is a 3-year programme that's been going on now for around 12 months to try to raise standards in schools in our area. Beverley, good morning. This has been personally championed by yourself. What changes are we now seeing in schools here in Greater Manchester because of the challenge?
Well, as you say, this is a 3-year programme. It was launched by me in July last year. I'm chairing the challenge across Greater Manchester. There's £50 million additional resource the government's putting in to our schools here. And over the last 12 months, we've really started to set up the different kind of work streams, making sure that parents and pupils and schools know what's going on. We've grouped all the schools across Greater Manchester into 11 different families according to the kind of pupils they have, and that's so that those schools can start to work together to share best practice. We've identified the schools where we think there's a lot of potential for those kids to do better, and we've put expert advisors into all of those schools. We've got a number of programmes now beginning to ratchet up. There's a very, very important one around raising aspirations, which is a big issue for here in Greater Manchester. There's another work strand in relation to getting parents involved, because we know that actually the single most important factor in youngsters achieving their educational potential is their mums and dads, you know, and how much their mums and dads aspire for their children to do well. So that's a very important strand of work. And, you know, we're seeing some really, at the moment anecdotal, but individual success stories coming through. But the key test will be the results this year. We'll have had just about 12 months, so we want to see some real evidence that standards are rising.
Only last week we saw headlines that too many children, when they're moving on to secondary school at the age of 11, that their standards aren't up to scratch. They're probably where pupils should be around the age of 7. How much do you hope that the things you're putting in place now will help to improve standards and try to tackle those sorts of issues?
Well, this is what the challenge is really all about. And I wouldn't like people to think that there aren't some great things going on in Greater Manchester schools. There are some schools that are really doing well. They've improved a lot over the last few years. And part of the challenge is helping all schools to understand what best practice looks like, to learn from those that are doing well. There's a big focus in primary schools on reading, on getting all kids up to the standard that they should be. Reading recovery programmes have been very popular in our primary schools, and that's particularly important because I think reading is key to everything. It's key to all the learning you do later on in life, actually. And so a number of schools have got those programmes up and running now where they didn't have them before, and that is giving individual pupils dedicated one-to-one time. And this is a very, very well-established programme, and the evidence is that if you can give that to youngsters, they make dramatic progress in a matter of months, and then that builds their confidence. It not only improves their reading, it improves their whole confidence and their ability to think that they can do well. They start believing they can do well, and it makes a huge difference.
We've had this for 12 months already. What more is there to do as we move into the final 2 years of the programme?
Well, as I say, this year has been about establishing some of the structures, putting in place the experts in individual schools, getting each local authority who are working very closely with us on this to take ownership of leading one of the strands of work so that they can take that forward. Because the key thing here, you know, is that we mustn't just have a 3-year programme and then when that's finished and the money is used up, things slip back. What we're trying to build is different ways of doing things for the rest of the future. And so it is important to get this framework, the basics in place. But over the next 2 years, we really want to see this well established. We want to see all schools really pushing the boat out for their kids because, you know, our kids in Greater Manchester, there's 600,000 of them. You know, they're as good as children anywhere. And we know at the moment, despite improvements in recent years, that they still are underperforming in some areas. And that particularly applies to youngsters perhaps from communities where it's not been traditional to go into further education. Maybe their mums and dads had to leave school early, you know, so they don't know anybody who's gone on to college and university. And there's still big gaps between what those youngsters achieve and youngsters from, you know, more middle-class backgrounds, if you like. And so for me, closing that gap between youngsters who perhaps come from backgrounds where that's, you know, higher education is normal, and the rest is a key objective of this challenge. Raising standards for all the kids, but particularly for kids from those backgrounds where they don't traditionally have those opportunities.
If we move on for a couple of minutes to just talk about an issue which has obviously been in the news such a lot over the weekend, the issue of MPs' expenses. I know this morning the Conservative leader David Cameron, he's saying that really MPs need to be saying sorry for the sorts of headlines that we've seen about MPs' expenses. How much do you think that that is necessary given the level of anger that's been reported about expenses?
I think it's necessary. I mean, I think just to say things are in the rules, clearly when people have claimed for things that are very, very hard to justify is just not sufficient. And I think many of us feel really quite angry that, you know, obviously it tars everybody with the same brush. People who've made reasonable and proportionate expense claims, their claims aren't being published, understandably. But we all get tarred with that, and I think it does a great disservice, not just to MPs, but to politics generally. You know, we're going to get to a stage where nobody wants to come into politics, I think, because, you know, the reputation of MPs has been so tarnished, and I think it is necessary to say sorry.
Some of the reporting of this in the papers, it's almost seemed as though the papers are saying that some MPs have been pretty much milking the system for as much as they can. Is that the case, or is that unfair the way it's been presented?
Well, I think, you know, everybody who's been accused of making claims that aren't really justified has got to answer for themselves, and I'm not going to answer for them. I think, you know, it's right that the public know about this, however that came about, and I think now the system absolutely needs to be fundamentally changed, doesn't it, and with a real transparency and rigour in the way that it's implemented. And
where do you think we go from here to try to rebuild confidence in whatever system does replace this?
I think we've got to come forward with some proposals that are going to be made by the Independent Commission under Sir Christopher Kelly. And I'm sure that the government will accept whatever recommendations he makes. And I think because they'll be made by an independent person of some stature, I hope then we can draw a line under this, set up a system that conforms with those proposals and move on. But I think we've got a lot to do as MPs, really, to rebuild public confidence. OK, Children's Minister Beverley Hughes, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Time now for a break. Coming next, music from 14-year-old Cleo Talley.